Today's case involves the story of two low-life, pathetic excuses for human beings who never should have had the chance to be around an innocent 12-year-old little girl. Malinda Hoagland experienced things straight out of a nightmare, and even though there were so many red flags, so many adults in her life who could have stepped in, no one did. And as a result of this inaction, these adults turning their cheek away from the signs that were right in front of them, Malinda is no longer with us. But before we get into this case, I have a little secret to share with you all. You know how sometimes you just want to feel a little extra fabulous, whether you're stepping out for a brunch with your friends or a cozy night in, the right fragrance can totally elevate your vibe. This month, I've been trying out some amazing new scents that have completely transformed my daily routine. I've been absolutely loving Maison Louis Marie No. 14. This perfume has notes of ruby pamplemousse, jasmine, Bulgarian rose, dark plum, and vanilla flower. This one is very light, fresh, and feminine. It feels like the perfect scent for a girl's brunch or maybe a coffee date. On the flip side, Twin Flame by 5 Scents offers a more zesty scent. It's made with cucumber leaves, Indian sandalwood, and white musk, perfect for going out or hitting the town with friends. Now, I know some of you might be wondering how to get that perfect scent boost, so here's a tip. Always apply your fragrance on your pulse points, like your wrists and neck. This helps the scent last longer and really emanate throughout the day. And don't forget, less is sometimes more. A few spritzes can go a very long way. I usually only do 2 or 3 and it's just perfect. These scents have become my go-to, and what's even better is I get to switch it up every month. It's like having a new favorite accessory without the price tag that comes with buying full bottles with the help of Scentbird. They offer a monthly subscription that lets you explore over 900 authentic designer and niche fragrances. Each month, you receive an 8 milliliter vial, providing about 120 sprays, plenty to test out how a scent works for you in various situations. So, if you're looking to explore your own scent wardrobe, I've got an exciting offer for you. You can get 55% off your first month at Scentbird using my code Shannon55off or scanning the QR code shown on screen. You can get your first fragrance for just $8, and the next month will only be $16.95. Trust me, you'll want to snag this deal and start experimenting with your perfect fragrance. That's Shannon55off for 55% off your first month. Let me know in the comments which scents you're excited to try. Thank you again so much to Scentbird for partnering with me on today's video. And with all of that being said, let's get into the case. Malinda Hoagland was born on July 4th, 2011 to Rondalyn Smith and Rendell Hoagland in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Malinda had 3 older half-siblings, Emily, who is 15 years older, Abby, 11 years older, and Jamie, who is 10 years older. I believe they all had the same father, but different mothers. According to her sisters, Malinda lived her early years with her father in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, while her sisters lived with their mothers. Malinda was always known as a bright, bubbly child who absolutely loved springtime in the Poconos, always catching butterflies and lightning bugs. She saw her sisters on a regular basis, especially on holidays and during the summer months. Malinda loved her sisters so very much, and they loved her just as much. However, it seemed that the close relationship Malinda had with her sisters all changed once Rendell got a new girlfriend, Cindy Warren, who he met through Facebook dating in 2019. As soon as Cindy entered their lives, the sisters felt that something was off, so they looked into her past, and what they found was concerning, to say the least. They found that about 10 years prior, in 2009, Cindy Warren and her then-husband pleaded guilty to charges of child abuse regarding their then 3-year-old son, Isaiah. In this case, it was reported that they would lock Isaiah in his bedroom for hours on hours at a time as punishment. When he wasn't locked away, they would beat him with a belt or force him to walk up and down the stairs repeatedly with his hands over his head. Cindy eventually told the courts that her husband, McKinley, was the one doing most of the abuse, but she watched it happen and never did anything about it. I'm not sure exactly what her punishment for this was, but it appears that Cindy did eventually regain custody of Isaiah. But that's not all these people were involved with. It was reported that once investigators looked into Isaiah's case, they were able to gather more evidence regarding a prior case involving McKinley's then 2-year-old daughter, Jessica, who he had from a previous relationship, but who was living with McKinley and Cindy when they were together. Back in 2000, McKinley had beat his daughter Jessica so badly that she died from her injuries. After charging him with child abuse from Isaiah's case, there was enough evidence to charge him with little Jessica's death as well. McKinley pleaded guilty to both charges and is currently serving 25 to 30 years for little Jessica's death. But from this, we can already see that this woman is bad news. She had a history of, at the very least, standing by and watching as the man she's with abuses and even murders their children. And at worst, she may have participated and just minimized her role in this. Then again, after this man murders his daughter, she goes on to have a child of her own with him. And once again, she stands by, participates as he's being neglected and abused. So of course, after Malinda's sisters found out this disturbing information about Cindy, they told Rendell that he is not who he thinks she is. She should not be allowed to be around Malinda. But these warnings didn't shake Rendell at all. In fact, they only made him upset at his daughters. From that point on, according to Malinda's sisters, Rendell made it as hard as possible for them to see Malinda. Then, soon after, Rendell moved with Malinda to West County Township, about 2 hours from the Poconos. With this move, Rendell told his daughters that they were no longer welcome in their home, nor were they welcome around Malinda. As all of that was happening, Rendell was in the middle of a custody dispute with Malinda's mother, Rondalyn. She made complaints to the courts about Malinda always smelling like cigarettes all the time. It was clear that they were smoking around her, and that wasn't healthy for her. She also knew about Cindy's concerning history and obviously didn't want her around Malinda either. Unfortunately, though, custody of Malinda remained with Rendell, though Sydney was not allowed near her. This was the decision the courts made, but of course, there was no way they could actually enforce it. So, as you could have guessed, they didn't listen. In fact, after the decision was made, Cindy and her son moved into the home with Rendell and Malinda in West County Township. For the years that followed, Emily said that she was officially cut off from seeing Malinda, so she had no contact with her at all. Jamie did have some contact, seeing her every few months and sometimes on the holidays, but they never really got much time to themselves to truly bond as sisters. And with that limited contact, those who loved Malinda had no idea what was going on within the home. We don't hear much else about how Malinda was doing until December of 2023, when teachers and staff at her school realized that she hadn't been there that entire month. These unexplained absences prompted them to call Childline, which is a state hotline in place for them to report suspected child abuse. As a result of the call, a staff member within the Chester County Department of Child and Family Services reached out to Rendell to inquire, though we don't really know the details of that call or a lot of the excuses Rendell gave. What we do know is that no one from the county actually visited the home, and it's unknown whether they were aware of Cindy living there. Then, about a month after the report was made, Rendell withdrew Malinda from school and enrolled her in an online program. Once again, no follow-up was made. No one reached out to see why she was pulled from school. No one even seemed to realize that this was done right after CPS called. If that wasn't a massive red flag, I don't know what is. And yet, no one did anything. Once again, we hear nothing about Malinda until May 4th, 2024. That day, at around 7:48 p.m., 911 received a call with reports of an unconscious 12-year-old female located in the backseat of a pickup truck in front of their home. When first responders arrived to the area, they were met with Malinda Hoagland, who reported that his daughter Malinda had struck a tree while riding her bicycle several hours ago. And now, all of a sudden, she went unconscious and would not wake up. When first responders began their examination of Malinda, they were immediately concerned with her condition. She had a very weak pulse and was barely alive. She also looked emaciated. She was clearly very underweight for her age. Based on her condition, paramedics at the scene knew that there was likely more to the story, so they got the police department involved. As paramedics rushed Malinda to the hospital, officers stayed at the home and spoke with Cindy. Cindy identified herself as Malinda's stepmother, who lived in the home with her, Rendell, and her 9-year-old son. She explained that they had been renting out some camping space at Yogi Bear's Jellystone Camp Resort for about 3 weeks, going back and forth between the camp and home on the weekends. They had been at the campsite on Friday, May 3rd, but returned home on the 4th due to rain, leaving their camper and other buildings at the campground with plans to return on the 5th. Cindy said that on the drive home that day, Malinda was in the back passenger seat while Rendell drove, and she was in the front passenger seat, and her other son was in the back behind the driver's seat. As they drove home, Malinda was quiet. She didn't speak a word, so they just assumed that she was probably sleeping until they got back home and realized that she was not responding to anything and she would not wake up. The officer asked Cindy if Malinda had been injured, and she explained that there were a few incidents at the camp. The prior day, May 3rd, Malinda had slid down a water slide, but she didn't move out of the way fast enough, so another larger kid came down and slid right into her. But they didn't think that this was anything serious, saying that she only got a small injury to her chin as a result. After the slide incident, Cindy explained that she and Rendell were sitting around a fire pit at around 12:30 a.m., now going into May 4th. They were listening to some music, not totally paying attention to what was going on. All of a sudden, they saw that Malinda had gotten on her mountain bike and started going down a slope. They then heard a loud crash and saw that Malinda had fallen off her bike after hitting a tree. She wasn't used to using the brakes on the bike handles, so she wasn't able to fully stop herself in time. So as a result of this fall, Cindy noticed that Malinda had sustained a small bump on the side of her head, as well as a small cut to her nose. They gave Malinda a bag of ice, telling her to sit down at the picnic table and ice her head for at least 5 minutes. After icing her head, though, she seemed perfectly fine. She got back up and started playing some cornhole and then hung out with the dog. She was up until around 5 a.m. and slept until around 2 p.m. When she woke up on May 4th, she was alert and acting like her normal self. She sat down and ate some pancakes for a midday breakfast. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, the concerning head injury on Malinda wasn't the only thing that concerned investigators about her presentation. As I stated, it was clear that she was severely underweight for her age. When officers asked Cindy about this, she said that Malinda had been losing weight for about 2.5 months, but she didn't know why. She started giving her Pediasure shakes twice a day to help her gain weight, as well as a daily kids vitamin to keep her healthy. But they did have a doctor appointment scheduled for May 16th to officially discuss her weight because they realized that her weight was concerning. At that point, though, officers knew that something was up. First of all, there was no way that Malinda was so emaciated and underweight for no reason. The only thing that would cause her to be so thin was either she was not being given much food or she was so sick that she wasn't able to eat for whatever reason and was rapidly losing weight. And if she was that sick, waiting that long to take her to the doctor is neglectful. The story about the head injury also didn't seem all that solid. It's totally possible that she hit her head after falling off of a bike. It happens to children and adults all the time. But then saying that she was perfectly fine before going to bed and then perfectly fine the next day, only going unconscious on the drive home, that just didn't make any sense. At that point, officers asked Cindy if they could search her phone. She agreed, handing it over to them to search back at the station. As all of that was happening, with officers speaking with Cindy, looking around the property, and bringing the cell phone back to the station, Malinda was being transported to the hospital. Upon her arrival, hospital staff immediately noticed that Malinda had bruising and abrasions all over her neck, lacerations to her forehead, bruising and abrasions to her chest, bruising and a deformity to her right arm and both legs. It was found that 12-year-old Malinda weighed only 70 pounds at that time. That is about 30 pounds less than the average girl her age, putting her below the 5th percentile for weight. Again, she would only get this thin if she hadn't been eating enough for a very prolonged period of time. Further examination and imaging also revealed that Malinda had fractures to both wrists and ankles, her L3 vertebrae, and to her pelvis. As I stated before, hospital staff noted deformities to her arms and legs that were likely caused by those fractures. I also want to note that the pelvis is one of the hardest bones to fracture in your body. It takes a significant amount of force for that to happen, so just keep that in mind as we go throughout the rest of the video. They also found that Malinda suffered bilateral chest contusions, she had fluid in her abdominal cavity, as well as severe damage to her liver caused by multiple lacerations, which is actually what they believed caused her to go unconscious. Trauma surgeons attempted to repair the damage done to her liver through emergency surgery, but unfortunately, their efforts were too late. 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland died from her injuries at the hospital. Of course, after finding all of these horrifying injuries to this little girl, officers took her father, Rendell, back to the station for further questioning. Rendell repeated the story that we heard from Cindy. She fell off her bike after crashing into a tree, but she seemed perfectly fine the rest of the day. He said that he didn't know why Malinda was so emaciated, explaining that he did have a lock on the snack cabinet of the home so that the kids weren't constantly eating snacks, but they did have access to the rest of the food in the home. He went on to explain why she had been pulled from school and why no one outside the home ever saw Malinda after December of 2023. He said that during the fall that year at a parent-teacher conference, he had demanded to search Malinda's locker. When he did, he saw that she was hoarding food and was apparently selling it to other students. Rendell reported this to the school and was absolutely pissed when the school didn't take her actions very seriously. This is why by December of that year, Malinda started missing school because he was frustrated with the staff. He said that he's aware that DCFS was called, but that him pulling her out of school had nothing to do with that. After pulling her from school in January of 2024, she did online classes. Through these classes, she would go on Zoom calls, and there she could interact with friends and classmates, though he said that her friends never actually saw her in person. Officers then asked to see a photo of Malinda, and he showed them a photo he took on January 5th, 2024. In this photo, Malinda looked drastically different than she did by the time she died. And this was the very last photo Rendell said he had of his daughter, so for the almost 6 months that followed, he didn't have a single picture of her, and I wonder why. They then asked Rendell about how he would discipline Malinda, and he admitted that he did have some physical tactics. He could have her stand in the corner, march in place, or run in place. But that was the full extent of his physical punishments. He said that Cindy also would discipline Malinda, but he didn't always know exactly what she did to discipline her or what even Malinda was in trouble for. For example, Cindy had taken away Malinda's phone about 2 or 3 weeks prior to her death, but he didn't know why, nor did he seem to inquire. He did confirm that he communicated regularly with Cindy via text about the kids and about anything else. After this interview, officers were able to obtain a search warrant to search within the home where Malinda lived, as well as any electronic devices they had. They collected a laptop and a couple of tablets, all of which had been locked inside a gun safe in the home. They also noted that there were blank security cameras located within every room of the home, though Cindy told officers that they didn't actually record any video. As I stated, Cindy had handed over her cell phone the prior day, but they also recovered a few additional cell phones in the drawers of their bedroom. In the home, officers noticed that Cindy's son had a large TV, a video game system, as well as a bed and any other items you'd expect in a child's room. However, there was no form of entertainment or games or really any comfort items in Malinda's room at all. When searching the family car, officers recovered a pair of Crocs that appeared to have blood on them, as well as a key that belonged to a set of handcuffs. I also want to note that during that interview with Rendell, officers noted a brown stain that looked like blood on his t-shirt. As that was happening, officers were also sent to the camper van at the Jellystone campground to search there as well. In the trash, officers recovered a pair of pants that appeared to have blood on them, as well as a pair of girls' underwear, of course, thought to belong to Malinda. Those were really the only items of interest found at that camper. Then, of course, as I stated earlier, officers started searching the cell phones that were within the home and the phone that Cindy handed over. Immediately, officers noticed that all the text conversations between Cindy and Rendell prior to 9:30 p.m. on May 4th had been deleted. This was obviously strange because Cindy herself said that she regularly communicated with Rendell via text. So what was she trying to hide so badly that she deleted all text conversations? But even with those missing text conversations, initial searches of the phone showed that there was a video taken on the doorbell camera, but was saved to the phone via a screen recording. The video, dated January 31st, 2024, showed Malinda standing on the porch outside and crying. She tells the camera that she's scared, and a voice coming from the speaker on the camera, believed to be Rendell, can be heard laughing and saying, "Right away, it's always someone else's fault," as Malinda continues crying. In the video, she's wearing a sweatshirt with the hood up, and she appears to be black and blue, covered in bruises. Then investigators went ahead and looked into the camera footage saved from their Blink security system. As I stated, Cindy tried saying that the cameras didn't actually save any of the footage, but that wasn't true. Investigators ended up finding numerous videos that show a horrifying insight into how Malinda was being treated within that home. The videos are dated back as far as July 24th, 2023. Many of these videos show Malinda being chained to various furniture while being forced to do exercises, all while being verbally berated and threatened. They found over 100 videos that show similar situations, but I want to highlight a few that really stood out to investigators. In a video dated January 27th, 2024, you can see Malinda chained to an air hockey table. She, at one point, was forced to do marches in place while shackled. You then hear Cindy's voice over the camera saying, "Keep moving and don't look for breakfast or lunch tomorrow because you're not getting it. And you won't get dinner either because I'm not getting up." Later that same day, while Malinda is still shackled, you see Cindy enter the room and tell Malinda to shut up before calling her an effing idiot. On February 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, there are more videos of her chained up while being forced to do squats, marches, running or walking in place, among other exercises. In one video, she's told to stand in place with her arms over her head, maintaining that position for 5 hours straight. All the while, she's being screamed at, belittled, and taunted by both Cindy and Rendell. In one video, she's doing her squats while chained up before Cindy says over the camera, "You look a little tied up at the moment, and because of bitches like you, I have pains in my cooter hole and won't move." Malinda is heard responding, "Please, I'm sorry. I know I can't move, and I'm sorry." In another video, Malinda is caught kneeling down while chained up instead of standing like she was supposed to. Cindy is heard over the camera saying to Malinda, "If you kneel again, I will come and kick you in the teeth." In another video on the 13th, timestamped 7:50 a.m., there's a video of Malinda chained to her dresser while she did her homework. While doing her work, Rendell can be heard calling her a jackass and telling her to put her hands on her legs. By the 28th, there's another video of her chained up to the air hockey table. All throughout the month of February, there are other videos that show her sleeping on the floor while still chained to that table and being denied food. She hardly ate that month. By April 3rd, video shows Malinda chained to the hockey table while picking at her hands and eating the dead skin. Weeks later, on April 25th, video shows Malinda chained to a desk while Cindy yells at her to keep moving. She then says, "Have a nice life, bye bitch." The last video is dated May 2nd, and once again, the video shows Malinda chained up at a desk while doing her homework. Again, as you can see, Malinda was being treated horrendously. That is obvious by those videos. I would think that she was probably being denied food for months before these videos even start, because as we said earlier, she was caught hoarding food in her locker and was selling it. My assumption is that she probably was not eating at all at home and was only eating when she was at school. So she was most likely taking any and all food she could, keeping it in her locker, and might have been even taking it home to hide there and eat when she wasn't being given food at home. So she probably wasn't losing weight as quickly. But once they started homeschooling her, they probably just didn't feed her altogether. Based on those videos, it appears that she almost never ate, which makes sense how she would lose weight that quickly over the course of about 6 months. But to make matters even worse, beyond what we see in those videos, investigators did end up recovering some messages on Rendell's phone between himself and Cindy where they discuss Malinda's final moments. On May 2nd, Cindy sent a photo to Rendell of Malinda where she has snot coming out of her nose and there is an abrasion to her right eye. There's no other context other than that from this message. But then, at 12:52 a.m. on the morning of May 4th, several hours before 911 was called, there are messages that discuss Malinda's worsening condition. They discuss how Rendell went out and shopped for smelling salts, likely to wake her up as she got worse. By 5:32 that same day, Rendell suggested that they call an ambulance, which Cindy told him not to. Instead, she said he should run. These messages had originally been deleted from both of their cell phones, but thankfully, again, officers were able to recover them when executing the search warrant on their phones. At this point, there is a very clear, disturbing picture emerging. Cindy and Rendell were torturing poor Malinda for months, if not longer. We know that it started about at least a year ago, but that's just based on the video evidence they were able to uncover. No one truly knows how far back the abuse goes. She was humiliated, starved, and forced to do uncomfortable, painful, and exhausting physical demands. All the while, Cindy relished in her treatment, enjoying every second of watching this 12-year-old little girl suffer. And I do want to note that I absolutely believe Rendell when he says that he pulled her out of school because he was so mad about her selling food. But I don't think that's why he was actually mad. I think it was because they were starving her. They didn't want her to eat. They didn't want her to have any food at school either. They wanted to maximize her suffering, so that's why they pulled her out of school. And then once they knew that nobody was going to be watching her or seeing her outside the home, I think the physical punishments got even worse and they started beating her by that point. Now, after finding out all of this information, Malinda Hoagland and Cindy Warren were both arrested and charged with kidnapping and aggravated assault, among other charges. But shortly after Malinda succumbed to her injuries and more of this information came to light, their charges were upgraded to first-degree murder and conspiracy. We still don't know with absolute certainty how Malinda died or who is officially at fault. But with what we do know about how both Malinda and Rendell treated her and the fact that Rendell had blood on his shirt, allegedly, there were bloody Crocs found, I really don't think it matters. Given what we know about how they both treated her, I think they most likely beat her while at the campsite. She probably went unconscious long before they headed home, but they just didn't do anything about it. Instead, they tried figuring out what to do and how they could get out of it before finally putting her in the car and returning home. Once they had their story straight, or at least thought they did, and felt that they had deleted enough off their phones and security system, they called 911 to report her condition, saying that she just fell off her bike. And they were both stupid enough to think that police would just buy their stories despite the horrific condition she was clearly in. And as of right now, that is where the case sits with regard to the charges against Cindy and Rendell. They both have pleaded not guilty and are awaiting their trials in jail as investigators continue their efforts in gathering enough evidence to get a conviction and send these two monsters to prison for good. Of course, as with any other case like this one, after information came out about how Malinda died, everyone who had known her were devastated and pissed. Her older sisters, Emily and Jamie, had been very open in the public about how they believe Malinda was failed. There were so many red flags that were just missed. So many opportunities for the proper authorities to step in, but it just never happened. The very first red flag was Cindy and Rendell dating in the first place. Rendell's older daughter tried to get her out of their lives, tried to get Malinda away from her, tried to talk sense into Rendell. Cindy had a very disturbing history of being involved with horrific child abuse, yet Rendell let her into his home anyways. Not only that, but he cut off his other daughters and moved away from them to make sure they couldn't do anything about it. Then the courts did decide that Cindy wasn't allowed around Malinda, yet they never actually followed up to make sure it was enforced. She was able to live with Malinda for years after the ruling was made, and yet no one did a thing about it because I doubt anyone even knew. I will never understand how or why cases will go to court for a ruling to be made, and the courts just expect people to listen without anyone enforcing the ruling. If Rendell is allowing Cindy into their lives to begin with, knowing her history, of course he's not going to listen when he knows that nothing is actually going to be done about it. Then, when the school was concerned about her constant absences, CPS reached out, but they never actually met with Rendell or Cindy, never physically checked on Malinda. And to make it even worse, after CPS was called, she was removed from school, and yet still, no one did absolutely anything. That is literally the biggest red flag you could have waving directly in your face, yet none of the school staff, none of Malinda's teachers, no one who worked her case at CPS, no one did anything to inquire. If they actually visited the home and looked into everything, they would have seen that Malinda was living with a woman with a documented history of violent abuse against children, and maybe something could have been done to save her. But as we've seen far too often, and as we will continue to see, none of that was done, and now we have a 12-year-old who suffered endless hours of abuse and torture before her body just couldn't handle it anymore. She suffered so very much before she died, and I'm sure her death was very slow and painful, a horrific ending to a horrific story. All because no one stepped in to help her. Right now, Malinda's sisters are out there fighting for justice for Malinda. They ended up filing a wrongful death suit against multiple agencies, including Chester County CPS and Malinda's school district, who they believe missed obvious red flags and failed to step in to stop the abuse. The suit states that the warning signs missed were, quote, so astounding and show an absolute failure of the system that never should be allowed to happen again. We don't know the status of this lawsuit, but I hope that they're able to push it as far as they can to force them to take accountability for their lack of action. They absolutely should have stepped in to help Malinda, and with a lawsuit like this, the hope is that cases like this are not able to continue slipping through the cracks, because one child going through this is enough. And when children are suffering at the hands of their parents, it's up to their school and child protective services to step in. And when they fail to do so, as it happens so often, the consequences are devastating. But that is where the case sits as of right now. As I stated, Rendell and Cindy are awaiting their trials in jail, but I will keep you all updated as more information comes out about this case. If there is a lot more information that comes out with the trial, I will make an update video or update the description for this video. But that is all I have for you all today, and now I want to hear your thoughts. How do you think Cindy so easily slipped through the cracks? Do you think DCYF and the school district will be held accountable? And do you think this case will go to trial? Let me know this and any other thoughts you have in the comments below. If you like this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn that notification bell on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Also, make sure you click the link down below and use my code Shannon55 off to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Spotify. All will be linked down below. And if you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out the Google form, which is listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.